Good afternoon to all of you. I really do miss you, actually. I've gotten a few emails from people, and I'd like to encourage more of you to send me emails, just a short thing telling me how you're doing. Um, I got 2 emails from Asia, students from Mongolia and Korea who are back home, getting a little bored with the quarantines and so forth. And here I'm doing pretty well. I have health conditions, and I'm getting a lot of sleep, but I feel something like a hermit. Just staying in my room, doing things, practicing Chinese. Um, it's gonna be, I think, until early June before we get out of this. My friends in Wuhan are now almost done with their quarantine. They haven't had a new infection for a week or so, and they're gradually getting back to normal life, although wearing their masks. Wear your mask, wash your hands, don't go with a lot of people, keep a social distance, do all the right things, and don't get infected. Okay, so here where are we? We're in Unit 6, and we're continuing with modal logic about necessity and possibility, going further into it. And before doing this unit, it's highly recommended that you do the homework exercises, 4 translations, see if you get them right, and then 4 English proofs, valid and invalid. And here we start with the ambiguous arguments, which are a little tricky. And if you've done the Logicola, at least the basic valid ones, well, then you're all set for this next part. Okay, so first of all, let's do the homework translations. These are the last ones and really a bit on the tricky side. 27 says it's necessary that it's possible. No, let's do that one again. It's necessary that it's possible that there's matter. Now, this is the first time we've had a modal operator within the scope of another modal operator. So it's necessary that it's possible that M. And there are questions about whether this is equivalent to just possible M. Are they the same? Are they different? Well, this entailment would seem to hold. If it's necessary that it's possible then it has to be possible that M. But the other implication, if it's possible, is it necessary that it's possible, or could it just happen to be true that it's possible? This one is really more controversial, and in fact, there are a few arguments where it makes a difference whether you accept that, and logicians aren't 100% sure, so they've developed different systems of logic. In some of them, these two are equivalent, and so possible gives you necessary possible, and in some that does not work. And we'll talk about that in the next chapter. Actually, we won't, but the book does. That gets into advanced questions of modal logic. But so does it make any difference for most arguments? No, but there are a few arguments where it does make a difference. So the argument is valid or invalid, depending on which system of modal logic is correct. This is very unusual. Usually, whether an argument is valid or invalid is pretty objective and agreed upon, but it's the truth of the premises that are disputed. But in a few cases, in some of these advanced systems, the inference rules themselves in the system is at question. And this is all very interesting stuff. next chapter. We will not do that, though, so that's more advanced stuff. We will see, though, one example where this kind of thing makes a difference, and it's an argument for the existence of God. Okay, we will see that. There is a God isn't a contingent truth. If you say it is, you would say there is a God, and there might not have been. It's possible that not G. So there is a God, but there could have been that there wasn't. That's how you say that there's a God is a contingent truth. If you say it isn't, you would put a not in front. So it's not the case that G, but possible not G. This is disputed. St. Anselm, we talked about him very briefly, and propositional. One of the propositional arguments was from him, who saw God as a necessary being. If he exists at all, then he exists of logical necessity. Now, 29 is an ambiguous one. If there's a God, then it must be that there is a God. Could be this, or could be this, if it's necessary that if there's a God, then there's a God. And somehow I erased this one. Not the case that G and possible, not G. Okay. So 29 says it could be this, box inside. If there's a God at all, then it's logically necessary that there's a God. And that's the same as really 28, that there's a God isn't a contingent truth. If he exists at all, he exists of inherent necessity, which is what Anselm thought. Or you could interpret the form as box outside, which is trivial. It's necessary that if G, then G, which is true, but not very interesting. Whereas the former one is equivalent to 28. There is a God isn't a contingent truth. If he exists at all, he exists of inherent necessity, which Anselm thought, but others disagree with. Now, 30 is box inside and outside both, which makes it pretty potent. It says it's necessary that if there is a God, then that there is a God by itself is necessary. So in all possible worlds, if there's a God anywhere, then there's a God everywhere in all possible worlds of inherent necessity. This is controversial, but it will be a premise in an argument that we will see later, and it's the argument that comes out as valid or invalid depending on which system of modal logic you accept about one operator being within the scope of another. We'll see that. It's a very confusing argument, but we won't spend a lot of time on it. Okay, proofs. 4 inference rules. The first thing you do is reverse squiggles. Not necessary A, therefore possible not A. Not possible A, therefore necessary not A. Do this pretty much automatically. The first thing, if you have a line that has not necessary or not possible, that's how it starts. The rest of it is very complicated or simple, whatever. Switch them. Reverse the squiggles. And this makes it so that you can drop them using the next two. And once you reverse squiggles, you can start the step and henceforth ignore the step. Now, I've been studying Chinese, and I was wondering if there'd be some analog of some of these principles in Chinese, and I found one today. Necessary is the same as not possible not. And one of my little sentence translations had that. Bu, neng, bu, not possible not, is necessary. So in Chinese, well, this holds. And I will be looking to see if there are other analogs of these in other languages. Logic is pretty universal, actually. The different structures in different languages and to study that more and maybe look for exceptions would be very interesting. So reverse squiggles, first of all, and then drop diamonds. You have possible A, so you imagine A true in a possible world. So you put A in a new possible world, which is represented by a string of W's. So if you drop 2 diamonds, each one has to go into a new and different world. Lastly, you drop boxes, and you generally use the old worlds, and you put the box in all the W worlds and sometimes into the actual world. Here are 2 examples: valid, invalid, possible A and B, therefore possible A, assume not possible, reverse squiggles, not possible A, therefore necessary not A. Drop initial diamonds, using a new world each time. You can only drop an initial box. It's got to be the first thing, box or diamond. It's got to be the first thing in the formula. So possible A and B, and so in some possible world W, A and B is true. You simplify that. Last thing you do is drop each initial box, once for each old world. Never use a new world when you drop a box. So when you drop this, every world has not A, therefore world W has not A. Contradiction, prove it valid. Or, in this case, you have 2 diamonds to drop, and so each one is possible it's not heads, possible it's not tails. Each one has to go into a new and different world. And then you drop the box in both worlds. So heads or tails, and then you get 2 possible worlds, or 2 possible scenarios, we might say. One, it's heads and not tails. The other, it's tails and not heads. And then you evaluate the truth of the premises and conclusion to see if you get true premises and false conclusion in that galaxy of possible worlds. How you do that is a little tricky. So let's take this case again. Possible A is true if and only if at least one world has A true. So possible not H. Does at least one of these have not H? Yes. So possible not H is true. So the possible is true if it's true in at least one world, at least one of these boxes, not H. True. Necessary necessary A is true if and only if all worlds have A true. So do all worlds have T true there? No, so that's false. Do all worlds have H or T? Yeah, here it's H, here it's T, so that's true. There you go. What if the wolf doesn't start with a box or diamond, but it's kind of inside? What do? Well, do the parts first. Plug in the value of the parts, and then you get the result. So not necessary H. Focus on the part, necessary H. Is that true? No. So you substitute false here, and then you get the result. Same thing here. Do the parts starting with box or diamond, and there you go. Okay. Let me give you 2 to do. These are not from the book. These are from here, the blackboard or the equivalent. Do them on paper. And this is to test that you know what you're doing. They're a little tricky. If you can do these, you're pretty good. So do these on paper. Hit pause, do them on paper, and when you're done, hit play, and you can see how they came out. Okay. Okay, let's try the first one. Assume the opposite. Assume not necessary. If A, then B. And so what do? Reverse squiggle. So you go possible not A implies B. And then what do? We'll drop this in a world. So reverse squiggle, drop diamonds into a new world, not if A, then B. And then you got false if then in that world, so you can say therefore first part true, second part false, and there you go. Okay, so what do we do with this line? You can't, this is a crucial moment here. On a lot of these, there's a crucial, tricky moment, and you got to do the right thing. And the rest of it will be very kind of straightforward and easy. So, what do? You can't. You can only drop an initial diamond. You want to drop these, but you can't. So what do? You're stuck. So what do? You break something. You make an assumption. Possible A. Let's assume possible A. And then we get possible B. And then we get star, star. And then possible A, possible B. So would we dump A in a new world? Well, we already have a new world. So you could do that, but it's not really needed. I mean, it works without that. The more refined version of the drop diamond rule says if you have diamond A, put A in a new world unless you already have a new world, in which case you can skip that. But here, this one you got to drop. So world, no, this one you got to drop. Possible B. So there's a world. You got to use a new one. WWB. Right? Star, star. You can't, if you put it in W, you prove it valid, but wrongly. Got to use a new letter, a new world when you drop the diamond. So what you end up with is two possible worlds, W, where you have A true and B false, and WW, where you have B true. And then we hope to have true premises and false conclusion. So possible A means A is true in at least one world. Is it? Yes. Possible B means B is true in at least one world. Yes. True implies true is true. And this one says in all worlds, if you have A, then you have not B. But looky here. You got A but not B. So is this hold in all worlds that if you have A, you have B? No. So you get true premises and false conclusion. Therefore, invalid. Okay. That one's a little hard and confusing. If you're confused, go back and look at it again. Okay, and here's another one. Also, it's invalid. And block off the conclusion, assume the opposite, assume not C. And then, first premise, we can break up. It's an and. So therefore, A, therefore possible B, and then we can start the first line. And then we can drop the diamond, possible B. So in some possible world, B is true. Okay, now the necessary thing goes where? Well, it goes in world W, and it also goes in the actual world because you have something without boxes or diamonds in the original argument. So you got to put that in both worlds. If you don't, your refutation's not going to work. Real important. So drop the box, put it in W, put it in the actual world too. So you have in the actual world, if A and B, then C. And in world W, if A and B, then C. Okay, you see that. That's an important step. Necessary, you put them in both worlds, or else your refutation isn't going to work. So what do you do then? Well, let's say the actual world, you have not C. If A and B, then C, but not C, therefore not A and B. Okay, A and B, how do we get that again? A and B implies C, but not C, therefore not both A and B. But in the actual world, you have A, therefore not B. Okay. Now, in world W, what do you have? You have if A and B, then C. But B, what can you do? You can't get very much, so what do? You break something. Yeah. This is a case where you have to make an assumption for another world, because you got to break this, right? What do you have? You just have B. That doesn't let you infer anything, doesn't let you break it up. So let's say that we assume W, now W, okay, W, assume, let's say, not both A and B. Now this is confusing. We very seldom do it. What are we doing? Okay, you want to break this. So you take either part and assume it, or it's denial, but you assume it in world W. So let's say you assume the first part is false in world W. Then you can put this two together and have therefore A is true. No, they're not both true. B is, therefore A is not in world W. And then this is broken. Okay, so what is the result? The result is we can now refute it. So you have here an actual world where you have A true, B false, A true, B false, and C false in the actual world, and then you have world W where you have B true and A false. Okay, now how does this work? A and possible B. A, you just look to the actual world. True. Possible B, at least one would be true. So it's true and true equals true. And then C, let's do the easy one. C means in the actual world, you have no box or diamonds. The actual world is C true now. False. Then you got to evaluate this. In every world, if you have A and B, then you have C. If you have A and B, then you have C is true here, because you don't have A and B. If you have A and B are true here, then you have C, because you have A is false. So if you do it more slowly, you could say is if A and B, then C true. In the second world, where you'd have false, true, unknown, and this would be false implies unknown would be true. So this comes out as true in both worlds. You could work it out here too. So you get true premises and false conclusion, therefore invalid. This is a difficult one. Again, if you're confused, go back and do it again. The important thing is, when you drop the box, you got to put it in both worlds, or else your refutation isn't going to work. Okay, let's go to the homework. I had you do 4 English arguments. These are of some philosophical note. Also, formally, they're a bit easier. The first one is against the pragmatist theory of truth. What is truth? Well, one view is what is true is what is useful to believe. Okay, so it's about usefulness. Truth is what is useful to believe. However, this one has certain problems. It says if the pragmatist view of truth is right, P, then A is true entails A is useful to believe. So this is entails, it's just boxed inside. So if pragmatist theory of truth is correct, then necessarily if something is true, then it's useful to believe. But A is true but not useful to believe is consistent. You can think of examples where something is true but not useful to believe. Therefore, the pragmatist view of truth isn't right. Now, let me ask you, can you think can you give me an example of something that's true but not useful to believe? Okay, let's see. Can anybody in the class think of that? Joey. Okay. My example is how many tiles are in your bathroom floor. That there's a certain number. Maybe it's 386. That's true. Is it useful to believe? Probably not. Hey, that's a pretty good example. Yeah. Is everything true useful to believe? No. There's a lot of trivial facts, like the number of tiles on your bathroom floor. So you can't really equate true with useful to believe. Okay. Annie's raising her hand. What? Do you have another example, Annie? Yes, I have another example. Are there an odd or even number of vowels in your logic book? Well, there's a truth of the matter. You could test it. You could count. Is it useful to believe? Probably not. Okay, very good, Annie. Again, you're smarter than you look. And I think I have to practice my Annie voice. But there are the things that are true. Some are useful to believe and some are utterly trivial and not useful to believe. So this is not a good definition. Now, if you give the argument, how does it go? Assume the opposite. Assume P. And then P implies necessary if T then B, therefore necessary if T then B. And then drop the diamond. There's no squigglies to reverse. Possible T and not P, B, so you put that in the world. T and not B. And then you can break that up. World W has T, and it has not B. And then you drop the box. Now, you could put in the actual world too, but you're going to get a contradiction right away by putting it in W. So if you can see you're going to get a contradiction, just get it right away, and don't put it in any other world. So every world has if T then B. Therefore, world W has if T then B. And then T implies B, therefore B. You get the contradiction. Therefore, it is valid, and away you go. Okay. Just now, a very funny thing happened. I was doing the problem like totally wrong. I made up the slide and I mistranslated the conclusion so that there was a knot here. And I was working it out and I was saying, this isn't right, something is wrong. So now in class I get very embarrassed when I screw up a problem. But here I don't have to. What I do is I just stop and I redo this section and then just cut out the wrong one. You don't even have to know that I made the mistake. However, with this part, I thought I'd be more upfront with you and tell you, yeah, I did make the mistake, so this is my second time around. And so if you translate it right, it comes out pretty easy. What is the argument? You know, let's say you know something. You're mistaken is logically possible. We could be mistaken about almost anything except maybe that we exist. Therefore, you know and are mistaken are logically possible together. Not valid, because maybe if you came to be mistaken, you wouldn't know anymore. So maybe if M is possible, but if it came to be true, then you wouldn't have knowledge. So it is not valid. How do you work it out? Block off the conclusion, assume the opposite, not possible, K and M, and reverse squiggle, therefore necessary, not, K and M. Then what do? Well, drop the diamond, into new world W, you got M, and drop the box into world W, not both K and M, and into the actual world, not both K and M, because you have something unmodalized in the original argument. So then you drop the boxes in the actual world too. And that's important because otherwise you're not going to get a refutation that works. So you got K, the actual world, they're not both true. K is therefore M is not M. And then in world W, you have they're not both true, but M is, therefore K is not. So you get in world W, not K. And then the refutation is pretty simple. You got the actual world, K is true, and M is false. How do you know that you put that in the actual world box? Because that's the simple things you have without being in a world other than the actual world. Then in world W, you put the simple things, M, not K. So in world W, you have M, not K. So you have, what's actually true is you know you're not mistaken, but what could have been true is you're mistaken and don't know. K is true in the actual world, right? You have no box or diamond, so you just go true. At least one world has M, true. Therefore, there's a world with both K and M. Got to be in the same world. False. So you get true premises and false conclusion. Therefore, invalid. How nice. Oh, this is the one where I was doing it wrong. Pretend that this doesn't exist. Okay. This is a nice argument that illustrates in a simple way the box inside, box outside form. The premise says necessarily if this will be, then this will be. Box outside because the first word is necessarily. So it's necessary that if be, then be, which is trivial. Therefore, if this will be, then it's necessary in itself that this will be. If it's true, it's inherently necessary in and of itself. It couldn't have been false. So this is not valid. And if you work it out, you will get premises true and conclusion false. Let's do it first, and then it's pretty simple actually. Assume not if be, then necessary be. False if then, therefore first part true, second part false, and then reverse squiggle. Possible not be, and then possible world W, you have not be. Now you could drop the box things in both worlds, but you're not going to get anything new. So I'm just going to skip that. So what you have is, in the actual world, you have B. In the possible world, you have not B. So in the actual world, you have B. And in world W, you have not B. So in every world, if you have B, then you have B. That's trivial. True. Therefore, if you have B in the actual world, which you do, then every world has B, which you don't. So true premises, false conclusion, therefore invalid. Okay. This is nice also because it illustrates two senses of que sera. Whatever will be, which is a common saying. Que sera. And it doesn't use the word necessary, but it hints at whatever the box inside form. Whatever will be is inherently necessary. What happens isn't just a matter of chance or choice. It's fated. It's inherently necessary. And this is a nice statement for three different reasons. Que sera. First of all, it illustrates the two senses of the box inside, box outside form. The first one, it's necessary that if it will be, then it will be, which is trivial, or the second one, which is fatalism. Whatever happens, happens of inherent necessity. And secondly, it's the same in various languages. Now, I'm more into Spanish, so I put the Spanish version, but it's very similar in Italian and French and maybe other languages. I don't know if there's a version of it in Chinese. So it's nice linguistically. It's the same in various languages, and inside, outside. Plus, a while back when I was young, about 1,000 years ago, there was a song. Que sera, sera, whatever will be, will be. The future's not ours to see. Que sera, sera. Oh, my singing is bad. That's why I became a teacher instead of a singer. But anyway, que sera, sera, whatever will be, will be. This is a mother singing to her baby daughter, to her little daughter, telling her, don't worry about the future. In a sense, she's teaching fatalism. What the future's set. Whatever will be, will be. You can't worry about it. You're not going to change it. You're not going to change what's going to happen. What's going to happen is so be peaceful about it. Just be accepting. This is fatalism. I do not like it. It's the opposite view as the one we talked about from Sartre. The decision is inescapable. We have to make choices. It's going to modify our world, how we choose. I go more with Sartre. What you do is going to have an effect on your future and on the world. And it could be one way or another, depending on how you choose. So yeah, worry about your choices. Your choices are very important. Instead of que sera, sera, everything is set. Anyway, okay. Okay, the last one here is our first ambiguous argument. Recall that certain forms are ambiguous in English and in Latin and a lot of different languages. I don't know about Chinese yet. We will have to see about that. And so you say a sentence. It could mean one of two different things. This leads to a lot of bad reasoning about things. This is an example from Boethius, the medieval thinker. Boethius, who we'll have a quite nice argument from him later on the divine foreknowledge human freedom question. He was an early Christian thinker, and he went through, if God knows what we're going to do before we do it, does that take away our free will? And he says no. He says the argument that it does is based on a confusion. Confusion we've called the box inside, box outside ambiguity. Okay, and he gave this as kind of a simple argument to illustrate it, the confusion. Okay, I'm still, first premise, right? I'm still, I'm just sitting in my easy chair. I'm not moving. I'm still, truth, S. If I'm still, then it's necessary that I'm not moving. How could I be still and yet moving? Impossible. So if I'm still, then my moving is necessary that I'm not moving. But if it's necessary that I'm not moving, then whether I move is not a matter of my free will. Therefore, whether I move is not a matter of my free will. It would be impossible for me to get up, for example. Now this, you're saying, is a crazy argument. It's a trick. Does not prove that you have no free will, and I agree. But what is the problem with it? It seems to be a bunch of simple if-thens. If I'm still, then it's necessary this, it's necessary this, then whether I move, I have no free will, therefore I have no free will. So what's wrong with the argument? Well, what's wrong according to Boethius is this premise in English or Latin could mean two things, very different things. The English language isn't so clear about illogical points. So if you say, if I'm still, then it's necessary that I'm not moving. It could mean this box outside, in which case the premise is true, but it's an invalid argument. We'll see the conclusion doesn't follow. Or it could mean this, in which case it's a false premise. That's his argument. It's a flawed argument. He gives us as an example. What's the flaw? This English expression could mean this, which case you have a defect in the argument. It's invalid and doesn't prove the conclusion. Or it could mean this, in which case the conclusion follows. That's pretty easy to show, but the premise is false. Okay, let me get into why is the premise false here? Well, it says, if you're still in this world, then in every possible world you're not moving. And that's crazy. In this world I'm still, but we could imagine a possible world where I'm hiking in the Grand Canyon or I'm moving or something. So it's valid, but you have a false premise. Whereas here, if you translate it this way, it's an unmistakably true premise. What's necessary is that if you're still, then you're not moving. Whether you're still or move or whatever is not necessary, but the relation between the two is it's necessary. If you're still, then you're not moving. And in this case, as we will see in a moment, the argument is invalid. So neither way does it prove the conclusion. So the problem is this is ambiguous. If you take it this way, you got a false premise. Doesn't prove the conclusion. If you take it this way, then it's just invalid. Let me show you the invalid part. Okay. So assume the opposite, that you are free. And therefore you can deny the second, therefore deny the first. You get not necessary, not moving. Therefore possible that you're moving. Therefore, in some possible world, I'm moving. Maybe I'm doing a marathon, yeah. Then the necessary thing, you dump in both worlds. In world, the actual world, therefore, S implies not M. And in world W, S implies not M. Okay. So in world, in the actual world, S implies not M, therefore not M. It's a very bad M. And in world W, you have M. S implies not M, but M, therefore not S. Okay, then everything's all broken down, no contradiction, so you do your refutation. We can do a big, big hairy box here. So in the actual world, you're free, and you're still, and you're not moving. You're in your nice, easy chair. You might be in your easy chair in your room, too, at this point. Well, nicely quarantined, away from viruses. Okay, then in world W, what could have happened is that you're moving right now, and you're not still. Okay, that could have been. That's an imagined possibility, another possible world. And then you have true premises, false conclusion. S is true. You look to the actual world, no box or diamond. In every world, if S, then not M. It's true here, it's true here. True. If every world has not M, does every world have not M? No, false. So that's false. False implies anything is true. Not F. You just look to the actual world, but it's F, so it's the opposite, so it's false. So you have true premises, false conclusion. therefore invalid. Okay. So homework for next time. Do 5, 6, 7, 8, 4 problems. Make sure to do the ambiguous arguments both ways. There are some. There's a very nice one there that we will talk about, of great philosophical import. And read pages 51 to 55 on informal fallacies. This is our last part of the course, actually. It's something totally different about reasoning, and it will kind of complement this formal stuff. So read about it, and we'll start into that next time. The next few classes or units, we will have a mix of modal and informal fallacies, and do the logicola ones, the proof exercise for the invalid and the combined valid and invalid. So both of them. So, good. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.